Welcome to another edition of the Arklatex Crime Files. I'm Jonathan McCall. On May 16th of 1970, the Northwest Louisiana Crime Lab was established, initially to help law enforcement agencies in Northwest Louisiana's 9 parishes solve a number of crimes, crack cold cases, and more. Now, the agency helps as many as 29 different parishes across the Pelican State with that same mission some 55 years later. In this edition, we go inside of the Northwest Louisiana Crime Lab to talk a little bit about what they're doing, the new technologies they're using, and how they're solving some cases in as little as 90 minutes.
Amy Patton, Michelle Jackson, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the Arklatex Crime Files. We greatly appreciate your time to kind of delve a little bit into what the Northwest Louisiana Crime Lab does. Obviously, without you guys, you're a very critical part of success in this, kind of this puzzle and, in solving crimes and helping law enforcement find, answers to cases and, trying to, bring some type of closure to a number of families as well. Amy, if you don't mind, we'll start with you. Just talk a little bit about what your role is at the crime lab.
Sure, absolutely. I'm the laboratory director here at the North Louisiana Crime Lab. So ultimately, I am tasked with overseeing the scientific disciplines. So here at the lab, we have firearms, DNA, chemistry, and toxicology. So I'm just kind of responsible for overseeing those, making sure that our staff have what they need when they need it, and have that support.
And for you, Michelle, talk a little bit about your role and what it is that you do at the crime lab.
Sure. So I'm the deputy director over the firearms and the DNA section. So I was a DNA analyst by trade. I've been doing that since '08, and then now I'm over both firearms and DNA. So I work closely with those two sections.
Typically, what is it, on a day-to-day basis that you guys are doing?
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, I would say on my end, on a day-to-day basis, it's finding out what our staff needs at the time, what, kind of if there are any emergencies that need to be taken care of, if there's anything that needs to be done to, facilitate, case reporting, or if there's instrumentation issues. It's kind of being a firefighter sometimes, figuring out, where we need to go and what we need to do, and then prioritizing those tasks. Every day is a little bit different, which makes it fun and exciting and unique and really busy.
Yeah, I'll echo that actually. A lot of it is you don't know what you're going to do on that day because it depends on the phone calls and the emails that you get. You don't know what's going on in one of the parishes, on the other side of the state that you might need to respond to, that you might need to have an analyst ready to work a case on. It's being able to kind of manage all the people that are around you to help the agencies with whatever they need at that time. So it's kind of you don't really know what you're walking into on any day to day.
The crazy part is you guys are coming up on a really big anniversary, if I'm not mistaken. May 16th, 1970 is when the Northwest Louisiana Crime Lab was established. So 55 years tomorrow, you guys have been around, just trying to bridge the gap a little bit and helping again law enforcement across Louisiana solve a number of crimes. You talked a little bit about what you never know what the day is going to bring for you guys when you get a phone call. What is that phone call like?
Sure. It could be anything. It could be, hey, we're looking at a case that happened in the late '70s. Can you figure out what you guys have on your end? Have you worked anything on this before? It could be, hey, we just had this homicide that happened over here. This is the type of evidence that we have right now. What is the best evidence that we can use for analysis? So it's just kind of figuring out what questions they have and then how our expertise can help them answer those questions. It could be something as, oh, well, they didn't really know about DNA testing in the late '70s, so we really need to take a look at that evidence and see what would have been collected that we could be using now. Or it could be like, oh, yeah, you've got a ton of blood evidence. There's a lot of DNA with that. Let's look at that and see what we can analyze to answer those questions for you.
When you get those
Yeah.
calls, oh, go ahead, Amy.
I was gonna say just some things that aren't kind of case related, that we also get that we've been getting a lot of recently are requests for training, requests for education, requests for information, both from a law enforcement, the law enforcement community, as well as kind of community educators. And so we've been putting a lot of effort into community engagement, tours, presentations, both for those that are up and coming in the sciences, as well as our law enforcement partners who need more information about DNA and firearms and toxicology and chemistry. So really trying to educate them as well.
Do you find that it's working, that some of those questions, that training, that you're kind of building that bridge with law enforcement and the community is kind of paying dividends on the other end of, trying to, solve some of these cases and get, find the pieces to the puzzle?
Yeah, I think so. We're seeing a lot more. We kind of have continuous classes, so we have continuous different because there is turnover in those agencies. So we're just constantly trying to get the word out there, get the information out there, and continue training and just being there to support anybody who needs the help as far as education goes with our services.
When you guys handle kind of a multitude of different things. You mentioned the fact that, you take a look at DNA, firearms, you help with unsolved homicides, you help with cold cases as well. Is there one area that takes a little bit more precedence than the other? Is there one area that's a little bit more challenging than the other?
So something that's going to take precedence is there if there's a safety concern to the general public. So if you have something going on with an unknown suspect, it could be, unknown suspect in a serial killer or unknown suspect rapist, any of those types of scenarios where maybe the agency's collected really good DNA evidence, but they don't know who the person is. That's when we're going to step in. We're going to try to work that as quick as possible, get that profile into CODIS and get a hit for them so that we can help identify the person who's committing these crimes. The other flip side of that is if they ever have a body and they don't necessarily know who that body is, and they need DNA analysis to help them figure out who that person is. Usually there's a rush on those because there's family waiting and they want to know who this is, and we want to help identify who that person is. As far as challenging samples, the older the case is, the more challenging it's going to be. And that's kind of across the board because evidence isn't always kept at the same level back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that it is now. It's not as secure, it's not kept in temperature, it's maybe disposed of. And so those types of cases can always be more challenging, just having the agency locate the evidence itself, and then what limitations we might run into as far as testing and DNA degrading over time. With the firearms cases, those don't really change over time. They don't break down in any way, shape, or form, but DNA can definitely break down over time. So that can pose a challenge for us.
We'll kind of dive into those lanes as we go through the conversation um, with regards to the unidentified and the kind of the cold cases. So can you talk a little bit about when you get that information in from a law enforcement agency, they may give you a sample to try to identify someone. Is how quickly are you guys able to, get an answer from some of that information to give back to them to help them out?
Well, actually, just in the past month, we finished a validation of our rapid DNA instrumentation. And so we can get a DNA profile from a good sample within 90 minutes now. So within a working day, we can actually start identifying those types of cases. Now, for other cases, if there's just bones left behind and we're going to have to try to get a DNA profile from bones, the processing of those samples takes much longer. Just to process a bone sample can take upwards of like 3 days to a week, depending on kind of the state of the sample. So best case scenario, we can find out within the same day. Worst case scenario, it's going to take us longer just because of the nature of the sample.
That rapid response, you mentioned the fact just within the last month. What is the kind of that
Yeah.
process, if you don't mind, kind of diving into what it's like to get that information, you get it in, you run your test and you are able to, as you mentioned, just kind of start getting a small piece of information or a big piece of information within 90 minutes. I think that's incredible.
Yes.
Most people may not necessarily be aware that it could be just that quick, or that
Yeah.
turnaround time could be just that quick in order to get answers.
Yeah, it's new instrumentation. It's being released throughout the nation. Some of them are at booking stations now. So if somebody gets booked, they can collect a reference sample from that person and it'll search against certain crimes within the database to see if it hits right there at booking. But within the laboratory for us, it's more for reference samples. So it's for those unidentified human remains. It's a cartridge. We put the swab sample in the cartridge, literally put it in the instrument, and it does the whole process within 90 minutes. There's some drawbacks to it. It's not as sensitive as our normal processing, so we wouldn't be able to do touch samples or any sort of mixture DNA samples. But for reference samples that come straight from an individual, it's 90 minutes later, we're getting a DNA profile out of it.
Wow. How valuable is it for you guys to have something like that readily available to you?
It's very exciting for us. So, like I said, it doesn't have the sensitivity level that our normal DNA processing does, but I like to say it's like what DNA processing was 20 years ago. And so, if that's where we're at now, where are we going to be in 20 years with this instrument? What kind of results is it going to be able to give us within that 90-minute time frame in the future? So, I feel right now we're kind of at like this tipping point of where we'll be able to go and what kind of results we'll be able to see. So, we're really excited about it. We just got it validated. We're finishing up training of all the staff now, but it's really a big deal for us, and we can't wait to see what support we can provide to the agencies with this instrumentation.
Can you talk a little bit about any other technological advances that you guys could be looking at into the future? I know artificial intelligence is a big word, and so many people are finding ways to see how it could help them do their jobs a little bit easier, but also a little bit more effective in finding solutions to what they do to break through some barriers. Do you guys find that that could be the next thing that you may be looking at, or are there other things that you guys may be looking at with regards to technological advances that will be beneficial for your job in helping to solve cases?
Yeah, I think on the toxicology side specifically, we have some really advanced instrumentation that we're really trying to leverage in looking at emerging drugs. So when we get a sample in, if it's a suspected overdose, typical testing may not show any drugs present because it's a new drug, it's a novel drug, but we have the ability to run it on this really sophisticated instrumentation and find these emerging drugs and kind of get those answers. And that's technology that's changing all the time. We're able to really keep up as much as you can, keep up with the emerging drug trends on that side of things. So that's something that's really exciting to us, and that will kind of continue to evolve and really help us on, especially the post-mortem side for finding those answers for the suspected overdose deaths.
Yeah. Are you finding, do you guys get, I don't want to say bombarded, but do you find different things? How do you guys kind of come into knowledge of whatever these advances are? Is it, just through trial and research? Is it something that you notice that other labs are doing, or other agencies may be doing, and you're like, okay, this is working, or this is something we could definitely use in our tool belt to facilitate what we do?
Yeah, I think a big thing for us is networking, going to our various society meetings, going to those conferences, listening to other laboratories, listening to, the marketing and everything, but really talking to those other laboratories, our peers, to say what's working, what's not, what are you excited about, what's something that's up and coming in your area. Those networking opportunities are really vital in our community.
And then also meeting with the vendors and seeing what research they're working on and what they're developing and how we can possibly implement that in our laboratory as well.
Amy, I'll ask you a question real quick with regards to drug cases that you may be seeing. Are there any trends emerging with regards to any type of drugs that you guys are coming across more often? Is there a drug that could be on the way, on the horizon that you guys are kind of focusing on a little bit that brings you some type of concern or worry or something that the public should be aware of?
Yeah, I think both on the drug chemistry and the toxicology side, we're really seeing a large uptick in methamphetamine along with fentanyl. Fentanyl was, kind of the buzzword for a long time and is still an issue both here in Louisiana and nationwide. But here we're really starting to see the uptick of that combination of fentanyl and methamphetamine. On the drug chemistry side and the pills that are submitted, that in the past were maybe only fentanyl or only methamphetamine, now they're the combination. And then we also see that on the toxicology side, in the blood and urine samples that they are being taken in combination. So just due to the nature of those drugs independently and together, that is obviously a very large concern. And then, we will always be concerned with kind of, like I said, that emerging drugs, the things that right now you can buy in gas stations or you can obtain semi-legally. Not much is known about those drugs. And so that's something that is of concern because we don't know at what point it's lethal. We don't know what those effects are when people are on those. So when we kind of start to see those emerging drugs, that is something that is also like more from a public health perspective, almost really concerning.
Are you running into cases where you may be, with regards to those drugs? I know right now there are plenty of laws in a number of in Louisiana to try to get those out of kind of the stores, and I know in Texas there's also big talk of trying to get some of those drugs that look very tempting, very look kind of almost harmless for children and things of that nature out of stores. What are you finding with regards to your research and with regards to your investigation about these particular drugs whenever they come into the lab and your concerns about what you're seeing when you're diving into the numbers and you're going through just trying to take a deeper look into them?
I think one concern is just the sheer prevalence of them and the number of them. So, all of these emerging drugs are very similar to one another. A minor change in the chemical structure can make it go from, say, illegal to legal in some instances. So, just the sheer number of these that are really, out there in the marketplace that are very easy to obtain, as you mentioned, and can be very flashy, very exciting for the younger population. And then kind of more on the like I said, the research side, not necessarily pinpointing a particular trend. So we may have a driving impairment case that has a relatively high level of a specific substance, but then on the other side, we may see a postmortem case that has a very low level. So things that don't necessarily match up in that regard, because again, there's not much research into these to know what they do, what they can do, how they interact with other drugs or other substances. So really, seeing how much information we can gather and help the community, the scientific community, get some more information about these drugs is key.
Amy, what's in the drugs? Do you know? Is that kind of, the mystery is what exactly is inside of those packages that could be working with your body or working against your body, that causes the detriment and causes these horrific side effects?
Yeah, that's the key right there. There's been quite a bit of publication recently looking more or less at label claim, getting these packages from, online or the gas stations and not only seeing what is in them, but comparing that to the label to see what was allegedly in them. These packages come, with all of these labels that say either that they contain drug X or they don't contain drug Y. But we've seen here and then research across the nation has shown that those are very misleading, and it can even change from package to package. So, the person truly never knows what they're getting when they purchase these drugs.
When you find, if you are doing a postmortem, if family members or some law enforcement have questions about what you've been able to find, are they baffled or shocked or, are they just kind of at a loss that, you're the experts and even you're surprised about what you've been able to find, and even you guys aren't even sure of, just kind of what was inside of those packages?
Yeah, I think the reactions run the gamut from, that this makes sense based on, maybe what was found at the scene or something like that. Or when we have to give the results and, they say, we don't even know what this is. Can you explain it? Um, there's all kinds of responses to that. And it's really difficult to explain that, you may have found a package at the scene that said it had this in it, but actually in the blood we found this, and kind of linking all of that together to make it understandable both for law enforcement, maybe for the medical examiner, and also ultimately for the family.
Yeah. Amy, I want to ask you, and I'll ask both of you. Can you talk a little bit about how many cases you guys may be currently working from, obviously from, guns, drugs, unidentified cases, homicides. I know, like I said, you guys are doing a lot and you're running the gamut. Just if you can talk a little bit about just how many cases you guys typically handle on a year and how many you're working right now.
Yeah, I'll just kind of talk from a global perspective, and then Michelle can chime in with some additional details. Over the last 4 years, we've received about 14,000 requests. So for us, a request may be a case that comes in that needs only DNA analysis, or a request may be a case that comes in that needs a DNA analysis, drug chemistry analysis, and a firearm analysis. So we kind of break them down like that. It ends up being about 11,000 cases a year, but 13 to 14,000 requests out of those cases. As far as requests go from last year, our chemistry section released about 10,000 cases. Our toxicology was just over 1,000. And then I'll let Michelle speak to her section.
Yeah, so as far as firearms goes, that could range between 100 and 125 per year. And then the DNA section usually goes between 800 and 900 per year. Now, at any given time within this section, we probably have 50 to 75 cases open. So in analysis or in review or just kind of working their way through the system. And then within the firearm section at any given time, there's probably about 10 to 15 cases that are open and somewhere through either analysis or the review portion.
So, Amy, your section is a little bit more detailed, a little bit more thorough, where you have to do a little bit more testing, ballistics, things of that nature. So, you may get swamped with a lot of cases. The turnaround time, as you mentioned, even though you have the technology, sometimes it may not necessarily be within those 90 minutes, or it may take a little bit longer to put that piece together to help solve that case.
For sure, yeah. Turnaround time definitely varies depending on the type of evidence that we're looking at, the number of items of evidence that are being analyzed. With every item that you're looking at, that's going to increase your analysis time. It's going to increase your review time. Even just for maybe one item, like a sexual assault kit, it looks like one item that's being presented to the laboratory. It's actually a dozen different items that are within that kit. And so everything that has to be processed within that kit adds to the time. And it just kind of compounds itself over time because you then add that to the tech reviewer to look at as well. So we want to make sure that we answer the questions that need to be answered and do the most thorough job while trying to work through the process as efficient as possible.
What's one thing that if you I know every single case is different. If there's one piece of information that you found over the years that really helps you guys out, that says, you know what, this is it. What is that one thing or that one piece of that clue, that one piece of information that really helps you guys maybe submit the answers that you're looking for?
Communication with the agency. If you tell me there's a burglary where you don't know who the perpetrator was, but he cut himself and he left his blood on that glass, that's what I need to know. I need to know that whoever the perpetrator was, he left his blood on the glass. And so, great, we can collect that, we can throw that into CODIS, and maybe we can give you the name of the person who did it. So, communication is the biggest thing as far as DNA and firearms.
Yeah, same for chemistry and toxicology. Knowing, knowing information around the case and then being able on the other side to relay that information appropriately to the submitter. Really forging that relationship is 100% key for what we do.
Yeah. You guys, Amy, you talked a little bit about some of the unidentified bodies that you guys have that you're working to try to identify. Can you talk a little bit about how many of those cases you guys currently have? And you talked a little bit about the lack of DNA from those time frames that has kind of been a barrier. But how do you guys go about trying to solve a case that's 30, 40, 20 years old without that evidence?
Yeah, so once we've worked up a DNA profile and put that into CODIS, we attempt to get any hits we can from CODIS. If that doesn't work, there are other avenues that we can take outside of this laboratory. A most recent case that we had, it had been in CODIS for probably 15, 20 years. It had never hit to anybody. It had never hit to any missing person. It had never hit to any relative of missing person. So in collaboration with the agency that submitted it, they took the purified DNA that I had created from the bone, and then they used forensic investigative genetic genealogy. And so they actually took that the next step to kind of figure out who that person was. And this individual was deceased back in the late 90s, and it was just at the end of 2024 that we were able to identify who that person was with that collaborative effort between us, the agency submitting it, and then the private organization that did the FIGG on it.
Wow, that's crazy. So we're talking, when you're saying genealogy, we're talking about those test kits like 23andMe or Ancestry.com, where folks swab and send off their information to you know learn more about their history. You guys are using that information to help solve some of these cold cases, or some of these people who are unidentified.
Yeah, so the private labs will use what's called GEDmatch, which is a database that 23andMe and the other organizations they'll populate with the profiles that they have, and so they'll use GEDmatch to kind of put together a family tree of people to find those. They're called SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, and they'll use that to put together a family tree to actually kind of bear down on who this individual could be. And then on the back end of that, once the law enforcement agency finds out who this could be, they go collect reference samples directly from that person's family members, and that gets submitted back to us for us to confirm that testing for them.
Yeah. For folks, obviously, you guys, you guys do your job. We're gonna wrap up here soon. For folks who may not know what it is that the Northwest Louisiana Crime Lab does for them, for the general public, what would you say about your work and what you're doing for not only, Northwest Louisiana, but really for all of Louisiana, for someone who may need your help? How important would you say you guys, are to, just, everyday life, and to, so many communities across our area?
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to our mission statement, which is to provide that premier forensic service not only to Northern Louisiana, but to the state as a whole. We have really great scientists. We have a really great team here, really top-notch science that we can perform. So, we want to be that bridge between law enforcement and those answers to, do what we can to help law enforcement, to help the postmortem community, as well as help the families get those answers by doing kind of the science that we do every day here.
All right, Amy Patton, Michelle Jackson, anything you guys want to add to the conversation that I didn't ask you, but you think is important for folks to know about the work that you're doing, and just just the overall mission of the Northwest Louisiana Crime Lab?
I think a big thing for me, we need more forensic scientists. No matter the discipline, no matter where you are, not just in Louisiana, the country, the world needs more forensic scientists. So, for people who are interested in it, who want to get into the field, that's something that's really near and dear to my heart, is working with students, undergrad and graduate students and upcoming scientists, blooming scientists, to get them where they need to be. So that's one thing I would like to add.
Yeah, and I would like to kind of echo that. Everybody that we have in the laboratory, there's such a passion for this field. And so all the scientists, we are doing our best to stay on kind of the forefront of the technology and what the technology allows, and making sure that we have the best forensic science services possible to answer all the questions for the community, for the law enforcement agency, and just kind of to help everybody do their job so that they can get the answers for the victims' families, and just the community in general.
Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of the ArkLaTex Crime Files. I'm Jonathan McCall.